Hey guys, I'm so happy to be back at Mind Valley Hue. It's been 2 years. Any 10X fans in the room? Any Mind Valley fans in the room? Hopefully that's everybody. So some of you may know me as the 10X guy, or the guy only in fitness, but today I'm going to share a different side of me, and that is one in which I'm super passionate about, and that is working either with teachers or entrepreneurs and helping them discover where they're stuck or how to go to the next level, either with product design, but also how to just look at their business from an investor perspective. So do we have any business owners in the house? Wow, a lot. Any teachers or coaches, people who are building a business? Amazing. Any investors in the house? Public, private? Well, this is all for you because what I want to share with you guys, as you guys can see on the slide, is a bit of a vision of what is possible, not just for you as a teacher, but also for you as a business owner, looking at some of the challenges that we face in building products that really transform people. And transform really is the correct word because I look at things through transformation. I believe true value is in when we can identify a product that the market needs, but help the market not just become consumers of our products, but help transform them when they engage with our products. Because it's through the transformation in our clients or customers that they stay with us. Really, if you want to reduce churn rates, it's in transformation. And so today I'm going to share with you the 6 features of transformative product design that you should think about if you do have a product or you are the product. What are you missing? What are you not doing that you could be doing to influence things? Okay, so let's actually get started with the objective. So the objective here is that I believe that in each of us we have at least 3 identities. We are experts. If we want to take that expertise to market, we can become entrepreneurs and trying to scale that. And then number 3, even an outside perspective, which is to actually think of ourselves as investors in ourselves, that we're building an asset that we want to have build a certain value for people that will allow us to really transform, not just for ourselves, but for other people as well. So the first person who I really help with, or that I really work with, is the expert. This is the person who's working in the business. And when you're working in the business, this is really you as a product designer. And anyone here who is still starting, who basically is a one-man show? So when you're a one-man show, you really are the product. And the one-man show isn't less than the entrepreneur or sort of an investor. It's really where everything begins. It's where you have a vision. It's where you have an idea. And it's where you become obsessed with the product. And it's in the beginning stages where you really do the fundamental work. Later, I'll share a story specifically of Duolingo, of one of my favorite success stories in exactly just being patient and really getting the product right and why that will pay off. Once you get the product right, you can scale that. And you can really only scale that with what I call the 4 C's. When you have a great product and you want to scale it, you're going to scale it in either code, content, collaboration, or capital. And if you're typically an expert, and I work in the education industry mostly, so mostly I work with teachers who are trying to take their teaching practices and scaling that online. So people also think of me as a course developer. But I don't really design courses. What I do is I help people capture their essence, who they are, and then put that in an educational experience that they can scale. And the first step that you want to scale, if you are some sort of a coach or you're designing a product where you kind of are the business, is number 1, is in code, taking your content, taking the information online. Next, you want to think of yourself as an investor. And an investor is really having an outside perspective. The outside perspective is one where you're just looking at the raw numbers. You're looking on the return on your investment. You're looking to see, regardless of what the entrepreneur, the visionary says, or what the product experience is on the floor, is it actually bringing a return on that investment that you are seeking for? Now, we are actually all 3 individuals. We are the expert, we are the entrepreneur, we're also the investor. And this talk is designed to sort of give you guys ideas of whether you're one of the 3, what really makes for transformative products. So the problem that I really help solve is products that aren't transformative, that leads to businesses that either need to scale through levered growth or advertising, the opposite of organic growth, to really fulfill their business's potential. And your business has a certain potential. We look at that through the equity value of your business. So in order for us to really understand how to get an investor's perspective of our business, we need to know what makes a good business. If you wanted to sell a business, if you wanted to give your employees stock options, or you wanted to just know what the value of your business is, you want to look at these 3 specific numbers. Even if you're just a one-man show, especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you want to raise capital, these are the 3 metrics that you should know and become obsessed with in your journey to building a successful business. But in order to do that, we also need to look at what are the 6 features of products that transform people. And I'm obsessed with transformation because the difference between learning and transformation is when you're learning something, there's a change in the way you think, or there's maybe a single change in your behavior. Transformation is when you have a change in your behavior that's lasting in terms of how you think, but also how you behave and how you interact with others, which you're going to get to, and you'll see me come alive when I talk about transformation, because that's really the obsession that I have. Okay, so the 3 hallmarks of business. Your business is an asset. And the sole purpose of your business is to generate returns. You have to think of yourself as an asset. And an asset's something that just generates cash flow. And it's going to, now depending on in the stage of the business, it's mostly negative in the beginning. When, like most startups, they need to reinvest a lot in the business. So typically you see negative cash flows in a business in the beginning. But then, all of a sudden, when you get the product right, you can start to scale, generate more revenues, and eventually you'll start to become cash flow positive. But really, everything you do, any asset that whether you're an investor, whether you're a business owner, if you're a one-man show, you are the product. You are the asset. You have to, even if you are an employee, you have to think of yourself, what's your hourly rate? You are an asset working for a company, and your hourly rate is the returns that you get on yourself as an asset. So let's not overcomplicate it. A business is nothing but a potential to generate cash flows from an investor's perspective. So let's take a look at the first metric. The first metric you need to look at is the equity value per share of your business. So when you incorporate a company, you'll have X number of shares. And of course, in the beginning, the book value or the asset value is basically 0. Of course, until you start to trade, the number 1 metric you want to look for in your business from an outside perspective, because again, we get so obsessed. If you're a one-man show or you're a teacher, or especially in personal growth, we're so obsessed with the product, as we should be. But the problem we have is not being able to go to the next level. We become so obsessed with the product, we constantly innovate, and we don't actually allow ourselves to stumble upon a product that is absolutely perfect for the needs of the market and then moving on. Moving on then is meaning, how do I then scale this product that we have tested? So the first is the equity value per share. If your company has 10 shares, you put in $1,000, you're going to have $1,000 per share. Now, this is something you want to track. Then, after you've done some operations, you're going to be tracking your return on equity. Now, if you are an investor of any kind, the number 1 metric you're looking for is the return on your equity. You take your net income, divided by the capital that you have put in the business, especially if it's your own. And I'm specifically speaking at a private or small business level. You should be thinking like this. In fact, treat yourself like a company that's going public. Because the difference with the public and a private company, besides the obvious that it's so much bigger, especially large cap companies, think of yourself as a public company and treat yourself like one, because you're going to learn the language of business and finance so early on, it's going to give you an edge moving in the future. And the way that you really do that is by imagining all your financials were public, and imagine that you are answering to a board of directors, taking advice from an outside perspective to keep you on track, to take the product that you envisioned and that has something behind it, and helping fulfill the potential of that product. Next, then we have growth. How is the business growing over time? So there we're just looking at what's the earnings per share. So you have a certain number of shares in your company. You trade over a certain period of time. You may or may not have growth. You look at the growth per share, and you get a very good indication of the health of your business. Now, of course, there are many other metrics that you could select from, but these are the most common, and also these are the most important among small business owners, large cap companies, outside investors, employees, doesn't really matter, but these metrics will really serve you well. So going a little bit deeper, just to give you guys an example, we know the basic accounting equation is assets equals your liabilities and equity. Very important to understand, because otherwise you won't even know what your equity value potential is. So everyone familiar with the accounting equation, right? All assets must balance the liabilities and equity. Now imagine you put in $75,000 into your company, you take $25,000 debt, the asset value, or what we call the firm value, is going to be $100,000, and the difference would be equity minus liabilities. So number one thing you want to track is what is your company worth? Not just your CAC or your LTV ratio and things like that. Those are things when you're in the business from an entrepreneurial perspective, but from an investor perspective, just looking at the numbers, this is what you want to track. This is what you want to know. Treat your own company like it's a public company, like you are going to do an IPO, and you want to know exactly what you can trade at. By the way, if you were here at the previous talk, the benefit of this talk is that I'm going to give a lot of information. The drawback is it's not going to be always that fun, and things won't always make that much sense. So the return on equity, so we just take the net income and we look at the amount of money you put in, and you can basically see the return on your equity. You want to track this every month, or at least every quarter. Every year, you want to see if this number is going up. And a positive number is anything, especially if you find a company that does 20% and up, is actually a very, very healthy metric. But you take your net income, you find that on the income statement, you've got equity on the balance sheet, and you have your return on equity. So imagine we make $24,000 in net income for the year. Divide that by the equity, the amount of money that you own in the business. It might be all of it. Or but if you've taken out on some debt, you just take the equity part of the asset value, and you get your return on equity. Now, write these numbers down, because later it's going to become far more important. And if you do have a business, you want to know these numbers. If you don't know these numbers, it's going to give you the single best advantage. You're going to start to develop the language. Why do I say this? Because I remember being so obsessed with my product and never considering really how to think of my business, how do I know if it's growing, just always, who here feels that they're super busy just working on the product all day long, constantly innovating, not feeling like you can get ahead, not delegating enough to actually grow the business, not scaling anything, right? So one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself is to develop this financial acumen and language that's going to allow you to have an outside perspective on your business, to put your business hat on and dissociate from the obsession of your product and just look to see, because remember, the value of your business is a reflection of the value that you put into the market. So knowing these numbers will give you the edge, and knowing how to read them is going to give you the advantage. Now, of course, growth really comes in two forms. We can grow in two ways. We can grow, become more efficient in the business. We can also grow by reinvesting our profits. Those are really the two main ways that we want to grow, and this is going to give us our earnings per share. You take your net income and you divide it by the total number of shares. It's going to give you your earnings per share. So let's say, for example, you're a company that's just starting out. Of course, there's no growth because it's your first year. Let's say you make 24K, like the previous slide. You've got 10,000 shares. Your earning per share, your growth per share is going to be $2.4 per share. Great. Next year, we hope that goes up. In stage two, by the way, we all know that companies also have a life cycle. So what we can expect, what the benchmark is, many times people ask me, Lorenzo, what's a good number to go for? It's going to be, it's impossible to know, because it depends on the industry, and it depends on the products, and it depends on the structure of the business. It depends on the age of the business, because just like humans have a life cycle where we have 9 stages of life, all the way from prenatal development to late adulthood, companies also have a life cycle where they go from startup all the way to a rapid growth phase, to more maturity, stable maturity, and then eventually into a decline. It's very, very important to see that image, because we're constantly as entrepreneurs thinking we can just keep on growing, 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 which number one, you don't really want to grow, because growth by itself does not equal value. Growth with excess returns equals value, which is an example I'm going to show you in a few moments when we talk about Ferrari, because I think Ferrari is just such a stunning example of a transformative product. We don't actually think of products, number one, as transformative, because we don't understand transformation, but when we do, we can actually see what makes a product really, really transformative. And whether you're a coach or whether you're an owner of a large cap company, it doesn't really matter. It's the same principles. So imagine you keep on trading. You'll typically see that your earnings, your growth, will basically peter off, because what's happening is that you've got competitors coming into the market, and also your growth slows down and your market share goes down, and eventually you get to a mature stage, which, by the way, is also not a bad time to sell your company, because in its decline, we start to see lower growth. But that doesn't not necessarily mean a bad thing. Anyway, so again, return on equity, earnings per share, and just the equity value per share of your business. If you don't know these numbers are good to track. Okay, coming back to the problem. So let's get the business stuff out the way and talk more about transformation and how do we take products that are truly transformational. Because, by the way, also, when you're unhappy with a product, it's actually for the same reasons. So what are the 6 features of transformative products? Well, first we need to understand what I mean by transformation if we want to know that a product is transformative. The first is, for me, transformation is when you have either theoretical. By the way, what is education? When you think of education, what is it? We typically think, yes, change, right? And what are the tools for change? Change what? What do we change? What else changes? The way you think. What else can change? Because I've got behavior, I've got thinking, there's one more category. Sorry? That could be mental, or it could be a physical skill, a motor skill, or a mental skill. What else? How we interact with others. That's communication. So, so here's the other mistake that we make in terms of education. We put down theoretical information and say we just need more practicals. But what we don't understand is we need theory because theory changes minds. Good presentations, hopefully this might be one of them, it's supposed to change the way you think about something. Okay? The practical is supposed to changes the way that you do or interact with others. So we've got theory and we've got practicals. Make it very simple. They are supposed to change the way you think. When we do something practically, it changes the way we operate. So we've got intellectual capacity that's being changed through theoretical information. For example, you don't say, let's do something practical about history. Well, no. History, as a theoretical pursuit, changes the way that you think about who you are today as a result of what came. We call that historical consciousness. Historical consciousness is when you actually understand where you are today as a result of what came before. There's nothing practical about that, but it's very good to know. Wouldn't you guys agree? So theoretical information helps us understand where we are in the world, what came before us. Helps us understand and interpret the world. If I study chemistry, I can interpret the world in terms of chemical means. If I understand physics, I can actually decode the world in terms of physics. All of these things are super important. It's not one or the other. But make no mistake, theoretical information is going to help change the way we think. Practical will help to change the way we behave. We need both. For me, transformation is when you have both. When you change the way you think and you change the way you behave and treat others at the same time, and it's lasting, is transformation. How do we create that? So there's going to be 6 components for transformation. This is how we have created every course at Mindvalley. For those who don't know, most of you guys think of me as the 10X guy or the fitness guy, but I've been recruited in Mindvalley in 2016 to work mostly on product design, specifically working with some of the authors, taking their body of work and breaking it down into educational experiences that will have the highest probability of transformation. That's what I do. Vision saw a gap in the market in 2020 and said, hey, you have a background in fitness. I really want to launch a fitness program. Let's find someone. We try to actually knock on the door of actually a very prominent author at the time, Doug McGov, the author of Body by Science. He was not available. And so we said, let's create something better. And that is what we know today as 10X. So a transformative product, therefore, then, is any product experience. You have some kind of experience or interaction with the product that will change the way that you think, change the way that you behave, and interact with others as a result. Your employees don't always have to know this, but they have to know some of it. You'll see in one of the features, the 6th feature called reporting, why it's so important that it's one thing for your clients to transform, it's another thing for them to be able to report on that. It's in a way that change really happened if I'm not aware of it. Right? The way that you really reduce churn is that say, hey, you used my product for X amount of time. This is how you've changed as a result. All of a sudden, they stay with you because no one else is doing that. Just by reporting on how well you do something different for your clients, already gives you a competitive edge. I also see this in coaching a lot. People coach, but they don't track their results. That's crazy. People spend thousands of dollars with coaches. At the end, they're asked, exactly, I've spent X amount of dollars with you, X amount of time. How did I change exactly in terms of how I think, how I behave and interact? And people can't report on that. Not because they're not bad coaches, but to become a complete coach or complete educator, you need at least 4 skills. Write these down. You need 4 skills to become a complete educator. Number 1, an excellent presenter. I'm not there yet. I'm more on the thinking side. That's number 2. Number 2, to become a complete educator is presenting. When you present theoretical ideas there, your goal is to change minds. I'm not trying to transform you here right now, because that would mean to change your behavior. Maybe your behavior change follows that of changing your mind, but not so likely. Number 2, your ability to evaluate. Okay, let's say I want to change your idea on something, because right now the way you think gets in the way from you doing something. I change your mind. Then what? Then I want to analyze. I want to see where you're at compared to where you want to go. I want to analyze to see where you're at. Number 3, strategize based on knowing where you're at. Strategize what the next steps are. What are you going to do now based that I know where you're at? And then the last but not least is on now I'm actually going to teach you to implement the strategy. So for example, let's say you want to lose fat. The biggest myth of fat loss, people think that calories don't matter. It's the biggest myth. If you think calories don't matter, you're trying to lose fat, that's getting in your way. Calories absolutely matter. So once I convince you of that, okay, cool, I'm on board. Now I see that energy balance really is the trick to fat loss. Now we can move on to stage 2. Now let's assess where you're at with your fat loss journey. You may be 34% body fat, maybe 10% body fat, 5% body fat. Doesn't really matter. I want to know where you're at. So now let's go do a DEXA scan. We see where you're at. Now we've got data. Step number 3, now that I know where you're at, strategize. Okay, you are 35% body fat, you want to get to 25, what do we do? Okay, so we look at our toolkit, we've got 5 toolkits, or 5 tools in our toolkit. You're going to use tool number 1 for X duration, you're going to use tool number 2 for X duration, and so forth. You come up with a plan, and now you help that client implement that plan. Those 4 skill sets is how you become a great coach, teacher, or educator. This is how you transform people. That's if you want to be, because we get people who are very good on stage, they're just speakers, they're not very good analysts. By the way, right next to the 4 things I made you write down, what did I say? I said present. What was the second one? To evaluate. What was the third? Strategize. What was the 4th? Implement or to teach, right? Now, right next to those, the 4 personalities you need to evoke within yourself to become an excellent educator or coach. Number 1, for the presenter, that's it. You need to be a great presenter. Teacher, presenter, write down. I need to be a great presenter. Why? Not just because you can go on stage, you get paid to be on stage, but when you're on stage, you're an opportunity to change people's minds somehow, right? By the way, did you guys notice? We'll go back to the tables of contents, but if you really want to change a person's mind, the structure is there. Vision, what's possible. Hypothesis, how do things work? Number 3, method, how do we make them work? What do you need to do? Number 4, how do we apply it to you? Don't worry too much about it, but if you look at my table of contents, you're like, dude, what the hell is that? It will make a little bit more sense now, because everything has purpose. Every color, everything here has intention behind it. I'm more of a teacher than it is a speaker. I like to teach in small audiences. This for me is actually quite small. I'm kind of enjoying it, but that gives you an idea. Okay, number 2, you need not just to be a presenter on the theoretical side to change a person's mind, but on the practical side, number 1, you need to become an analyst. Analyst, that means you can interpret, you can see what a person, where they're at and what they need to do to get to the next level. That's an analyst. Whether you're a financial analyst, whether you're a fitness analyst, a business analyst, people who analyze, they can spot patterns, they see what's wrong, they see what's in the way, and they basically analyze and see, here, this is where you're at, here's your location. Right? It doesn't take much to be an analyst. Right? If I'm lost in Tallinn, for example, and I stop in the street and I ask someone, hey, how do I get to Old Town? That guy becomes a great analyst. It's like, hey, you're here, you want to go here, here's the distance, this is what you need to do. You can take a bike, you can take a train, or you can walk. This is how long it takes for each. Hey, and by the way, while you're on your way, get a great coffee at this place, and you'll find your way. All of a sudden, that guy's both an analyst and a strategist. He's just not teaching you how to walk to get there. That would be the teacher, helping you implement to actually do the things. Okay, went off track. That's actually going to come up. So if you missed any of that, I think there's a slide that's going to cover that. Okay, so are you guys with me in terms of transformation? Do we get that? Okay, I change my mind and I change my behavior and how I, as a result, how I interact with others all at the same time, and it's lasting. The 6 features, please write them down. This for me is 15 years of research of understanding how do we learn, how do we transform, and then how do we build this into our products so that we can reduce churn, maximize retention rates. And also, more importantly than that, we can also actually induce transformation, measurable transformation in our clients. Okay, so why and how we transform? Number one, the first, if you think about, someone earlier said, yeah, well, education is about change. Changing what, right? Now, two very important variable categories to track if you're interested in helping a person change or change within yourself. When we want to change something, we're inspired to change something. It's going to be one of 6 categories. In fact, the GDP of any country is made up of the next 6 countries. Or if you take the sum total of values of every human in a country, all the things and the wants and needs and desires, and our ability to meet those needs, that's the GDP of a country. They fall into 6 categories. These are they. People want to change and you improve their health, whether it's healthcare, fitness, it doesn't really matter. But the first category, something that you want to help a person change, something in their body. And I've mapped this out too. I'm not going to show you guys the map because it's just too much information. But if you want to change a person's health, person has health and fitness. Under health is homeostasis and structural integrity. Homeostasis is, how well does my body balance things right now in terms of hormones, heart rate, things like that. Then structural integrity. What am I made up of? Skin, muscle mass, bone mass. So that would be your body composition. Under fitness, just 2 things. Let's keep fitness simple. This is your ability to move well, so your mobility, and of course power. Everything can be reduced to those principles. We're not going to go into that now, but if you're trying to help a person with their health, it's going to be in their health and fitness, and they can be defined in very specific ways. It doesn't really matter if you define it in my way, but it's more like, just like I told you, what are the business outcomes? If you want to know if your business is doing well, we look at return on equity, we look at equity value per share, and we look at earning. Who can help me with the last one? Thank you. Earnings per share. So just like you want to know if you're doing well in your business, how do I know I'm doing well in my health? Does anyone just give this a shot? Which metrics do you use to know if someone's doing better in their health? VO2 max. Energy levels could be more of a qualitative metric. Absolutely. No. Yeah. Sleep. Now, here's what's kind of amazing, and this is what, if you guys are health coaches in any capacity, this is what's really cool, because I work with so many of them, is that this is really unique. I help teachers come up with their model of biometrics that they want to track to know that they're doing well, create reporting around that to send to their clients, so you can actually show how you're making changes to people. And what's quite cool, I've worked with Ben Greenfield, with Ben Pokolsky. I have worked with people in productivity, all the different metrics. What's quite amazing is the different metrics that they come up with. It doesn't really matter what those metrics are, but you must come up with an interpretive model of how you know you're improving your client's life, is what I'm actually trying to get at. Although I would love to do another talk where we just geek out on that. But number 2, changing of the mind. People want to change something with the mind. Write these 3 things down. But if you really want to make a positive change in a person's mind, the first one, congruence. Congruence. What does that mean? Authenticity, helping people be more authentic, congruent. Less doubt that I am who I am, and I have less doubt about that, and you're moving through kind of like the previous talk. Neutrality of mind, knowing what your highest values are and living congruently according to them. Number 2, intelligence. That's the analytical part I was telling you about. I can look at the world and decode it in some way. Intelligence is what you want to improve. The third is your actual knowledge. Intelligence and knowledge aren't the same thing. I can know the history of Tallinn, but intelligence is looking at Tallinn and telling you and seeing patterns in, let's say, its economic activity and coming up with ways to improve it and to do property development and seeing patterns and then building a plan. That's different. One is analytical, one is just propositional knowledge. So, congruence, knowledge, and we also have, what was the third one I mentioned? Intelligence. I sum that up as wisdom. Number 3, people. I want to improve my relationships, communication skills, negotiation, sales. That's all under here. This is my ability to affect other people. And here's what's interesting. Your influence is directly proportionate to the status of your body and your mind. If I hire you, I'm actually hiring your ability for your knowledge, for your intelligence, and your congruence. Congruence that if I hire you and you tell me you're going to do something, I can trust you, you are who you are. Number two, the knowledge that you have, that you bring to the company. Number three, your analytical ability to help me assess, make better decisions, and move things forward. Make sense? So your ability to influence is directly proportionate to your physical state and your mental state. So if you want more followers on Instagram, do something interesting. Become more knowledgeable. Add value. Focus on becoming more, not just becoming rich, which is next. Also matters, though. You see, this is also kind of in order. Now, if we think of private investment firms, we think of personal finance, we think of investing, it goes all under this category. Even your business falls under this category. I want to help with my business. You're going to fall in this category. Under business, if you really just think of the assets, we've got fixed income, cash and bonds, we have property, and we have equity. Most things can really be reduced to those three asset classes, and you want to think where you want to know where you are in that category, and more importantly, you want to know precisely how your business fits into that category. Again, not something we can go into right now, but just know that all of the value falls in one of these 6 categories. Okay, number 5, space. What do I mean by space? So space, literally the space. It defines how we experience everything. So space is literally the space, so it's your environment, and it's also materials. So if you're an architect, you would fall into this category. We're talking about homes, we're talking about the cars, all the material things that you own, falls into this category. We sometimes want more money so that we can buy more cool things, but also have great experiences, yes? Okay, so again, take any product and service under the sun, it's going to fall under one of these categories, and you are in competition of how are you better than anyone else in helping them improve some metric in one of these categories. Last, how do we time and space? So if you see body and mind, that has to do with the individual. Then we have people and assets, that has to do with the collective. And then time and space has to do with nature. That's why the reason assets and time are underlined, because those are the force multipliers. But again, the reason we see some of the biggest tech companies in the world today is we kind of think of them as time machines. They're helping us save times. Amazon is nothing but a time machine saving company. They help you pick a product, not even go to shop, and deliver it to your door, saving you lots and lots of time. These are time saving companies. So now imagine if you're offering a product in health, you can stack all of these, can't you? We help you change your space so that you can exercise better. We have a very efficient protocol, so it's going to save you time. And if you wanted to do it with friends and family, here's how to share that. And by the way, if you want to see your progress, we have a reporting system for that. So this is how they stack. Okay, now remember we said there's only 6 things you can do to change. We can change a person's mind. What else? Body, behavior. What else? And then how they interact. So it's 2 things. We can help a person's intellectual capacity understand the world around them. Number 2, we can help a person become more operationally intelligent. The way that they do stuff in the world becomes more focused, becomes more effective. So let's move on to the first. So values. So if you want to change in individuals, you have to communicate your product in terms of what's most valuable to them. What's in their highest values? You know what's interesting? Just look to the left. And you can actually put that in a hierarchy. I value my health more than this or this or that. There'll literally be a hierarchy of the things that they value most. So if you're someone who here is a health coach but working with people in finance, and it's almost impossible to get these guys to do anything healthy, right? So what's happening there is what you need to do is show them precisely how does being healthy help them make more money. That's communicating the product in their values. I have many more examples, but we're running out of time, but I want you guys to capture these. But the reason I say perceive is because values is not something, it's not an ideal, it's not something you want to be important. Your values is what you're already demonstrating. What you do, I just have to look at a time lapse of your behavior in the last week. It can tell you what you value. I look at your time, energy, and money, and how you spend that, and I'll know what you value. No one's good or bad for your values, as you saw in the previous talk, but understanding a person's values and changing. By the way, you can change a person's values.
You can change a person's values if they, for example, for the person who's now really wealthy but at the expense of the health and they want to value their health more, there's actually a way for them to start putting health higher on their values in a way that is more authentic. Because if it's not, they'll keep going back to their financial activities, studying financial courses, and it'll be impossible for them to do that. Why is value so important? If something's not high in your values, you always need external motivation to get you to do something. If it's high in your values, you spontaneously do it. No one has to remind you to do it. You see the difference? One's intrinsic, one's extrinsic. It's not good or bad, just understand your client. If it's extrinsic, by the way, not such a fun fact is that most clients you actually attract already have it high on their values, and they're the people who buy your product are the ones who usually need it the least. The people who need it the most don't have it high in the values and don't even show up as a lead. This is how it works. Okay. So you either change your client's values or you're going to help relate what you're selling to them within the highest values. I'm going to show you guys a great example of how Ferrari did this. Number 2, beliefs. What is beliefs is about how you interpret the world, right? If I believe one thing, that's going to determine how I perceive the world. My beliefs literally is the lens to my world. And so here what I'm really looking for is change. You want to educate your clients on your product. Okay? It creates an instant brand bias. The next time you actually walk into a grocery store and you pick something you like, which brand, you don't actually have a preference, but the one that you have more knowledge on is the one you actually pick. So there's a bias there just because of more knowledge. So when you actually have more information about a certain, let's say, with certain options, you automatically go for the one that you have more knowledge on, even if you don't like the brand, but you just have more information, so you feel safer. So write this down. The more people know about your product, not know about your product, the more they understand the product, how it works, and why it's the best product. That is going to give you, that will allow you to put a price premium on your product that's so high you'll never have to compete on price. When people understand and when they know your product and know why it's the best, you can raise the prices because they're just too scared to go anywhere else. They'll be like, I'd rather pay the premium because then I feel safe, because I understand why this is better. They use better materials, better delivery. They have a great story. I know more about the product. Number 3, analytics. Now again, if you want to change a person, you change what they value, they change what they believe, and you change their ability to analyze things. For analytics, one of the most underrated, but also one of the most difficult things to do correctly, and I find even who has an Aura ring? Anyone who wears an Aura ring? So even with Aura, they're still struggling to get this right. How do I communicate very complicated data to the average person so that they can stay? They had a churn of 20% when they rolled out the membership because people didn't actually understand that even though the analytics were great, but people didn't really understand. They needed to actually be educated on what the analytics meant and why it was important to them for them to get the most out of the product. So it's only those who educate themselves on the product that will actually stay with the company. Those are just like, I'm going to just not sign up for the membership. Notice we've got the colors. They match. So everything in that turquoise has to do with the mind. Then we move on to the environment. Now, another big thing that people don't do, this is the onboarding. Environment means making it easy, creating a space for people to consume your product, to make it easy. If you're selling a fitness product, or for example, with 10X, we did 4 lessons just on helping people get their space correctly. 4 videos, I think it was 2 hours just getting your space right. Because guess what? If people make a space in their home for fitness, the probability of them participating in it goes up, even if it's not high in their values. So creating a space, but if you're a tech company, the way you do this is with onboarding. How do I create the virtual space that's as frictionless as possible? So onboarding would be the environment. How do I make it as enjoyable as possible? Next is the actual practice, doing the thing. I had the bias here because I left school at 13. I said they taught me something that didn't teach me anything valuable. I thought everything had to be practical. If it wasn't practical, I wasn't going to learn it. And then I fell in love with the health sciences and chemistry and all the things that were literally as impractical as you can get, but it helped me to interpret the world that would allow me to make better judgments so that my actions in the world would actually be more reflective of reality. So, with practice in terms of your product, how do I use your product? How do I use the ring? How do I use this spray? Help me get the most out of your product. Teach me how to use it. Companies that spend hundreds of millions of dollars to teach people how to use their products are the ones that retain their clients for the longest. And you won't even believe what some of the companies doing this. Membership companies, you don't even think they should be membership companies. So, last but not least, social. And I say they commit because we're always in a social environment. And our social environment will make it either easier or harder for us to attain our goals. We know that as coaches, if you want the probability of success is to have people commit either to a coach, which is obviously us, commit to a partner, or commit to something or someone to help them get through it. But here's what's interesting. The less you have something high in your values, the more you have to compensate with social support to get you to do stuff because it's extrinsic. Make sense? If something's high in your values, I don't need you to tell me what to do. I do it spontaneously. If it's something I don't value, you have to keep reminding me to do it. And the best place to go for that, commit to people who will keep you accountable. But until there's a transition, until you don't need people anymore, behavior is truly changed when you go from needing people to help you to get started to becoming fully self-sufficient and independent. Make sense? Okay, so how and why do we transform? The reason we want to transform is because we want to improve our health. We want more product. We want to be more productive. We want to be healthier. We want to have more wealth. We want to be more resourceful, have more properties, have more stuff, enjoy life more. It's going to come down to these 6 things, and you try to stack them. Even if you sell a fitness product, how do I layer the others? How do I help you? How does it? Of course, you're going to be competing on money. You're going to be competing on time. So you stack them in a way that gives you a very good offer. Okay. So here's what you need to. This is what you want. If you have a product or you are the product, here's what you want to do to give your customers a transformative experience while using your product, give you the most value, see the highest retention rates that you possibly can. Number 1, values. Identify with them. Identify means this is what we're about. These are our values. Make your product or your service personal. Which, by the way, Ferrari did this very, very well. Ferrari was a culture of performance and luxury. And everyone can identify with that. And so when you own a Ferrari, for the guys, it's about performance. For the girls, it's about luxury. You've got both genders in there. And what you're doing is that you don't own an automobile. You are actually part of a whole club, a whole culture, a whole movement. People who love racing. In fact, and that comes to the next point. You'll find anyone who owns a Ferrari, some of the most educated people are the product. Didn't I say the more people know about your product and why it's the best, the higher likelihood of people staying? Because it creates brand equity. So education is about teaching your clients why your product is the best in the world, creating the benchmark. Number 3, being able to back it up. Hey, we are the best at X. Really? Can you back it up with data? This is where the reporting comes in. Hey, you've been with us for X amount of months. You have lost X amount of weight. This, compared to other people, is like 50% better. Are you going to cancel your subscription after seeing that? I don't think so. Okay, now we change people's behavior. This is changing the way people think. Now we have to change the way they behave. And of course, the one that usually follows from the other. Change the environment. This is the onboarding experience. First impressions matter. Is in a sea of options, when you have so many good options to choose from, if your onboarding experience sucks, people leave and they try something different, and the other product may be inferior, but that's the one that had a great onboarding experience, even though the product sucks. And then what do? You're like, oh, they so much. What do we do as competitors? Like, oh, they don't know as much as me. Oh, they're not as good as me. We have a way better product. But you're probably overlooking one of these things. Number 2, habits. Teach them how to use the product. How do I get the most out of it? Vision was just here this morning doing an orientation. What are orientations for? Hey guys, welcome to Mind Valley. If you want to get the most out of this experience, this is what you do. Welcome. This is how you get the most. Are you doing that with your product? It's the same thing. And of course, wherever you can a community in, this is where you're going to allow, this is where you'll maximize your conversions. This is where you maximize or reduce churn rates, maximize lifetime value of your customers is by bringing in a community. Ferrari is all about community. Did you guys see that Ferrari has like a theme park? You can go to a theme park and just everything Ferrari. And like if you don't own a Ferrari, you're not even allowed to be there, even the kids. So it's all about community. So how do you bring a social aspect into your business? Any questions so far? Okay. Oh, do you guys want me to go back? So in case I don't get to the end of my talk, which I usually don't because it's always so long, you guys can, I'll send you guys, just ask for the slides. I'll send them to you guys. And hopefully I do get through it because, do write them down still in case you guys don't get the slides. But here are some of the core drivers of value in your business. Okay, so I'm going to break this up like a financial balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow. These are the core drivers of business value that you want to look at from both an expert and an entrepreneurial perspective. Write these down. So in your balance sheet, we know that if you look at a balance sheet, you've got your assets. And typically, it's broken down in short-term assets, long-term assets, or fixed and, let's say, short-term assets. Here, I'm only referring to intangible assets. We grossly underrate it. If you are a coach, a small business, the assets you should be focusing on really are in the intangibles. What are they? So the number of products you have, number of clients, brand equity. Why? And even in that order, be obsessed with the best product in the world. Then, through word of mouth, you get more clients. Then you get a massive and awesome reputation that builds your brand. And then you hire a team that buys into that brand. And now this is the side of the balance sheet that you want to, that's going to drive your value. These are the intangibles that every business should be focusing on. Number two, if we now look at the income statement of any business, profit and loss, only two ways to really increase revenue: price per sale. So whatever you're selling, do you guys want to know how do you charge way more than your competitors? I just said it. How do you put a premium on your product and get away with it and even raise your prices every year? How do you do that? Sorry, what? Brand? Yes. Brand, education. So there's a direct correlation between people's perception of brand and how much they know about the brand. Knowledge is the correlation with brand. So how do we educate them? Sales per client. That's the second way to increase your revenue. If you want to make more money, it's going to typically be in these two buckets. There's many more, but these are the two big ones. Price per sale, sales per client. Okay, then you want to reduce costs. Cost per product, cost per acquisition, and the operations of running your business. Why am I showing you this? Because I'm going to show you that if you don't have all 6 features of a transformative company, how it's going to erode your business. On the cash flow side, you just want to take positive cash flows, reinvest it into the business, especially if you're starting out. I imagine many people are doing this automatically. Okay, so now let's take a look at the 6 features of a transformative product. You guys remember the colors? What does the turquoise mean? Changing the mind. So we want to identify with our customers, we want to educate them on the product, and we want to be able to back our claims up with reporting. Okay, then we have onboarding, which is onboarding and instruct, that's behavior, and then of course connect, social. So failure to do that has a direct impact on people don't relate with you if you don't identify with the project. If you don't come out and say, here's what we stand for, make your business personal. If you don't say what your values are, it's difficult to actually capture people. So as a result, you're actually going to get more leads, but less qualified leads. Number 2, if you don't educate people, the perceived value is really low. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but a bit of a news check. Don't assume that your customers know how valuable your product is. In fact, there's a gap. There's a gap between what your customers think of you, which is their perceived value, and the true value of your product. You want to close that gap. How do we close that gap? How do we close the gap between perceived value and the fair value of a product? Education comes up again. Exactly. Conversion. So for onboarding, this is going to lead to less conversion rate. So you lose a client that may have been a perfect fit. Less engagement if we don't teach people how to use the product better. If we have a social community connected to our product, it reinforces why they're there. Especially imagine you thinking, I think of leaving Mind Valley, and as you're about to, board your plane or whatever, you just see more people arrive and telling you how amazing it is, and you're going to start to doubt, like, wow, maybe I should not be leaving. Maybe this is amazing. So we actually are being reinforced constantly socially. We always look to others to see if a product is good or bad, despite even the education. So reinforcement really comes from other people. How do we get other people to talk well about our product? Well, firstly, have an amazing product to talk about. And then number two, make sure it's the best product that you have in your category, what I call a benchmark product. A benchmark product will have all 6 of these. Of course, report is to reassure them that the money you're spending with us is the best money spent. Because even though people can be educated and very excited, they have to be reminded of why you are the best. And so we do that with reporting. If we don't do these things, we see lower qualified clients. We see price per sale. We have to cut our prices to compete. Cost per clients go up. Sales per client go down. Brand equity goes down. Think about this. You could have all those things right, but if you have more and more people talk badly about your product, I don't care how well you do the others. So by the way, this is also in order of sequence. There's the perfect client out there. You have this perfect product. There are many clients that you want to serve. There's a perfect match. How do you attract them? Identify. Number 2, what do? Educate them about why you're the best. Once they're there, onboard them, the best first impression possible. But then the thing is to be consistent with that impression. Because people leave when they don't. They get all positive and elated and they realize it wasn't as great and then they leave. So you want to be consistent. Instruct them on how to use the product. Make sure that they're engaged. Reinforcement is going to lead to the highest brand equity. And then, of course, price per sale will drop if you don't. So just quickly, just give you guys some images. Just to show you how important this is to make your business personal. Do you guys know who this is? If you read carefully, you'll see it there. Charles Schwab, the founder of the bank. What's interesting is in the early 90s, his head of advertising said, Charles, I want to experiment. I want to do something different that no other bank is doing. I want to put your face to on all our advertisements. Charles actually declined this offer many times. But after 3 years of advice of trying to experiment with something, he put his face to every advertisement. This was in the 90s, hence why it's black and white. And their revenue grew by 10x just by putting his face there. He didn't even identify. He didn't say, hey guys, here's my values and join this tribe. None of that. He just put a face to a bank. And revenue went up 10x. What does it tell us? Right? And now, typically as an investor, I don't really think banks are the perfect place to put your money, but this would be the exception. If you invested, when they went public in 1987, $1 per share was 37 cents. $1 per share right now is $73. It's a 19,000% improvement or increase in stock value. It's the one bank I wouldn't mind investing in. Next, power of scarcity. Let me just show you guys the power of growth. So if you guys see on the left, we've got Volvo. They sold 17,000 cars compared to Ferrari. Ferrari only sold, let me see there, 13,000. Their operating income's exactly the same. But Volvo had to achieve 5 times more sales in order to achieve that. Meaning, Ferrari has an operating income or margin of 25%, 5 times that of Volvo. So, write this down. Growth, it's not about growth, it's not about revenue. It's about revenue that brings excess returns. So the margins is 25%, the free cash flow is 4 billion. So you're looking at your free cash flow of your company. Let's not chase numbers or revenue. We're chasing the actual excess returns on the growth. This is a classic example. Now, what did they do right? They identified with their audience. They educate them. Did you know, like I told you, Ferrari owners are among some of the most knowledgeable product owners of their product. And you have people wear Aura and you ask them, how does this work? They're like, I don't know, it just looks cool. Which is cool, which is one of the applications. But you want them to be educated. Not to mention they also have a group, community. On the education side, this is a perfect example that when you educate clients, And they're the best example of this because HubSpot, Salesforce, Kajabi, they literally created universities on how to use our product. Imagine creating just a university to teach people how to use your product. Since the implementation of some kind of a learning center with your product, doubled their revenues. Kajabi is not a public company. They're private, but they're now valued at $2 billion. Salesforce right now has a valuation of $255 billion. Okay, my favorite, Duolingo. I'm almost done. This is the last one. Sorry, guys. Okay, why is this one so important? Did you guys know? Please take this as probably the most important message. The founder of Duolingo, who here uses Duolingo? Who's used Duolingo? Almost everyone in the room, right? Did you guys know when Duolingo was launched in 2011, they didn't make a single dollar of revenue because they wanted to get the product right. They only started monetizing 6 years later of launching the company. They were cash flow negative, but they waited. They were onto something. They knew if they just took their time getting the product right. Why is it so important? Because if people don't even want your product and it's free, sorry to say, but you've got a shitty product, right? If people don't even want your product for free, you need to work on the product. They knew that. In 2017, they went public. They started to revenue. They went from $10 million in their first year of going public. By the way, did you know how they monetized it? Do you guys know how they monetized it? What was the different proposition? Number one, if you become a paid user, we take away the ads, you have offline access, and guess what else? We give you reporting on whether or not you're doing well or not, right? People literally pay to see if their input on the app was bringing back the return that they wanted in learning. Does this make sense? This is how they monetized it. So they went from $10 million in revenue in 2017, and in 5 years, they 24x'd their revenue, or 19x'd in 4 years, as a result of this single lesson. Being patient, getting the product right, and then monetizing with the right strategy, which in their case, how did they do it? What was their strategy? Of the 6 that I just showed you guys, what was the strategy that they used to monetize? Reporting. Literally, we're going to tell you guys how well you're doing, and people are paying for that. So they literally went from 50 cents per user when they first generated revenues in 2017 to $6 per user, because that's the number one metric for a company like that. Last but not least, we have the company called Costco. We don't think of Costco as a membership company, do we? But who here goes to Costco, has a membership at Costco? Exactly. Well, in 1984, when Costco was launched, they also launched a membership program, but it was only until they implemented, hey, by the way, you've always been saving, but now you can see how much you save. We're reporting how much you're saving. That allowed them to go from 75 million users in 2014, doubled the user count, which is 6 million per year in 10 years. 75 membership card holders compared to 130. Imagine that. Well, imagine my business at 130 million users, right? And this is not even their main revenue source, right? This is a retail company, for God's sakes. But they championed membership because they knew. What was their strategy? What is the strategy that they used here? How could they do that? 6 million new users each year. How did they do that? Which strategy of the 6? Reporting. By the way, you knew that you've always saved, but you didn't really know. Now we're in the app, you can see just how much you save, and that basically reinforces consumer behavior such that they had a retention rate of over 100%. And I've got more slides, but guys, sorry, I think I'm out of time. But with that, I'm going to love and leave you guys, and I hope you guys got something from the talk. And I'll see you guys at the next one. Thank you.